Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivarada
Jaya Gopi Janama Girivarada
Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana
Yamuna Tiravanajari
Yamuna
Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha
Madhava
Kunja Bihari
Kunja Bihari
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare
Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Shashwan Prabhu and Soni Mataji, for singing the Jai Radha Madhav so beautifully. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam. Please accept our humble obeisances on behalf of everybody who have joined the group and are about to join. Prabhuji, thank you for joining us. We are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 1, Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is the passing away of Bhishma Dev. And Prabhuji, the text for today is text 17. So, Hare Krishna, we'd like to hand over to you. We can do the Mangalacharan or read the text, translation purport, whatever you would like us to do. Kindly lead us.
Yes, Mataji. So what I'll do is maybe I'll read the text, and then Shashram Prabhu, after I've read the text and purport, are you all right to do the Mangalacharan? Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji,
Okay.
I think he will do them.
Okay. Thank you so much. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nastapraye Vyabresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Nishtaki. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. So Hare Krishna, everyone. As much as Kirtika much as kindly said, we're reading from Canto 1, Chapter 9, Text 17. Chapter is entitled The Passing Away of Bhishma Dev. Tasmaridam devatantram vyavavasya bharatshaba tasyanu vihito natha natapahi prajaprabho. Word for word. Tasmat,
Tasma,
therefore.
therefore.
Idam,
Idam,
this.
this.
Devatantram,
Devatantram,
enchantment of providence only.
enchantment of providence only.
Vyavasya,
Yavyasya,
ascertaining.
ascertaining.
Bharat
Parashaba,
O best among the descendants of Bharat.
or best among the descendants of Bharata.
Dasya,
Asya,
by him.
by him.
Anuvihitaha,
Anuvitaha,
as desired.
as desired.
Anataha,
Anataha,
helpless.
helpless.
Not,
Not,
O master.
O master.
Pahi,
Pahi,
just take care of.
just take care of.
Prajahaha,
Prajaha,
of the subjects.
of the subjects.
Prabhu,
Prabhu,
O Lord.
O Lord.
Translation. O best among the descendants of Bharat, Yudhishthir, I maintain, therefore, that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and, my Lord, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless. Purport. Matji, would you like to read the purport?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare
Okay.
Krishna. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai. The popular saying is that a housewife teaches the daughter-in-law by teaching the daughter. Similarly, the Lord teaches the world by teaching the devotee. The devotee does not have to learn anything new from the Lord, because the Lord teaches the sincere devotees always from within. Whenever, therefore, a show is made to teach the devotee, as in case of teachings of Bhagavad Gita, it is for teaching the less intelligent men. A devotee duty, therefore, is to grudgingly accept tribulations from the Lord as a benediction. The Pandavas were advised by Bhishma Dev to accept the responsibilities of administration without hesitation. The poor subjects were without protection due to the battle of Kurukshetra, and they were awaiting the assumption of power by Maharaj Yudhishthir. A pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulation as favors from the Lord. Since the Lord is absolute, there is no mundane difference between the two. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Matji. Shastri and Prabhu, would you like to lead the Mangala Charan?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Tadanti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Tapatakabalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shya Shri Rupam Sakrajadam Sahagana Raghunatarvitam Tam Sajivam Satvaitam Swavadudam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakadvitam Shya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुश्रुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधारा श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Shashwin Prabhu, for the wonderful recitation. So, Hare Krishna, everyone, and thank you so much for joining here today for today's discussion on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Just to repeat the translation from Canto 1, Chapter 9, Text 17. Bhishma Dev is consoling Yudhishthira Maharaj, and he's saying, "O best among the descendants of Bharat," he's referring to Yudhishthira, "I maintain, therefore, that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and, my Lord, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless." So, upon reading this verse, and we're getting to know more and more about the wonderful qualities of Bhishma Dev and his love and his compassion for the Pandavas. So as I was reading this verse and preparing for today's class, I was listening to the pastimes of Bhishma Dev, and one thing which stood out is that Bhishma Dev, he's in such a horrible position when you think about it. He's lying on a bed of arrows, so in a very painful position, and all the Pandavas surrounded him, and yet he's the one dying, but he's the one who's counseling Yudhishthira Maharaj, which is just amazing when you think about it. And so in relation to this, I was just thinking about probably a theme for today is Bhishma Dev's happiness and acceptance in the face of difficulties, and not just now the difficulties facing, but the difficulties of his life. So with that being said, I just wanted to, with reference to Srila Prabhupada's wonderful purport, first just take a recap of that's no problem, Mataji. So first do a recap of what's happening at this present moment in the Bhagavatam. Where are we? What's the situation? And look at that a little bit in the context of Yudhishthira Maharaj. And then maybe dive a little bit deeper into Bhishma Dev. Who is Bhishma Dev? You know, what's his backstory? How does it relate to the present moment that's happening now? And his character. And then finally, what can we learn from Bhishma Dev's specific reactions to and his teachings? Because Bhishma Dev is saying here, accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. And he's saying, I maintain this is all within the plan of the Lord. So even though something so horrible has happened, so many people have been killed, so many people have died, and Yudhishthira Maharaj is feeling very sad. Bhishma Dev is saying that to Yudhishthira, he needs to accept that this is just that you can't conceive what Krishna's plans are. And I wanted to talk a little bit about then when we face difficulties, when we face what's known as reversals or what we deem as bad things, and we're feeling these difficult emotions, perhaps how we could learn from the teachings of Bhishma Dev and how we can react. So, firstly, the situation at hand, what is happening at the moment in the Bhagavatam as we're reading. Well, Yudhishthira Maharaj has approached with the Pandavas. They've approached Bhishma Dev in a very somber mood. And in one one way of thinking could be, well, why is he so upset? Because many other kings, many other people, he's just won the battle, an amazing battle. He's just got the kingdom. He's now basically the king of the whole world, and yet he's very, very sad. And it was someone, another brilliant devotee, explained that devotees, they have kind of their external position, whether that be a high position in society or the person they appear to be externally, but internally they're something else. So externally, Yudhishthira Maharaj is a very powerful king. He's just basically gained kingship or monarchy over the whole world, essentially. He's in a very, very high position, but internally he's feeling morose. He's feeling sad for having killed or been responsible for killing so many people. He's feeling compassionate for all the people that have lost their lives. He's feeling compassionate and a great sense of, he's got so much love for his grandfather Bhishma Dev. And ultimately, this is because he's a devotee, a pure devotee of Krishna. And like this, there's other devotees who can be compared, in such a way they have a certain external position. It's explained that we can look at Lord Shiva, and he's known as the Lord of Destruction. And he's very powerful. He's got, you don't want to get on the wrong side of Lord Shiva. He can be very angry at times for punishing people. So that's his external position, can be very destructive and quick to anger. But on the other hand, his internal position is that actually he's a very, very dear, compassionate, and sweet-hearted devotee of the Lord, often referred to as the greatest Vaishnava. And there's one such pastime where Lord Shiva had the desire to enter Vrindavan, and especially intimate pastime of Krishna with the gopis, but he was not. He was unable to enter, and so he entered some waters and actually disguised himself as his body became that of a gopi from the neck down. And this way he was able to enter this pastime. But Krishna obviously recognized him immediately. But he was so amazed and happy with his devotee, Lord Shiva. He says, look what you've done. You have such a desire to see me that look what lengths you will go to. You've even become a gopi just to see me. So I declare from this moment forward, you'll be the guardian of this area, and the gopis and my pastimes with them. And there's, I'm sure many of you have been to Vrindavan, there's actually a temple dedicated to Lord Shiva in Vrindavan, Gopeshwar temple, Gopeshwar Mardev, in a wonderful celebration of this pastime of Lord Shiva. And then, of course, we have Bhishma Dev himself, who is, and we'll talk about his backstory shortly, but he's externally just the most perfect human being in the sense that very moralistic, all powerful, all knowledgeable, extremely spiritually elevated, and just an amazing person to be situated in a position of authority and power. But internally, he's just got so much love for Krishna, and he, even though he's this almighty, all-powerful person, he's extremely loving and compassionate to those close to him, including the Pandavas. So reviewing the situation at hand and how Yudhishthira is feeling, you could say that Yudhishthira, he's blaming himself for everything that happened, and he's taking on that responsibility. He's not blaming others, and he takes responsibility for his own failures. and doesn't blame others. Now, this is just wanted to pick apart this a little bit, is that this is a hallmark of a real devotee, because Yudhishthira, in one sense, he could be justified to say, oh, that Duryodhana, look what he's done. He's the cause of this. We only wanted a tiny piece of land. We bargained with him so much, and yet he refused to budge an inch. This is all his fault. But no, Yudhishthira is lamenting, feeling sorry and compassionate, and he's taking all the responsibility on himself. At the same time, you won't ever read about Yudhishthira Maharaj, even though he's achieved an amazing victory. You won't hear him bragging ever and taking credit. So in this way, we can see that a devotee doesn't take credit and takes responsibility for their failures, but doesn't take credit for their victories. And I thought this was a really important point. If you look at Duryodhana, on the other hand, he will blame everyone but himself. He's the leader of the opposite. Now, obviously, Bhishma Dev was appointed as commander of the army, but ultimately the leadership is with Duryodhana. But as we'll talk about a little bit later, Duryodhana is quick to blame his commanders of the army for them not winning, but he won't take responsibility himself. But when things do go right, he'll take credit. So this is the mentality of a materialist, which we all have to some degree, and we all can observe, is that the materialist takes credit and doesn't, whereas a devotee will always give credit to others, to the guru, to Krishna, and to those that have helped them. And I remember when I was new in Krishna consciousness, or even all the time really, I always am quick whenever I get an opportunity to glorify the devotee who introduced me to Krishna consciousness. And whenever I've done that in front of other people and he's there, he'll never take credit. And the first thing he says to me, Prabhu, I never brought you to Krishna consciousness. He said that, like, he just says, Krishna and your desires brought you there. And that was it. And I just think that is such a wonderful attitude. You can tell that he really means that as well. And he'll be very dismissive of anything he's done for me, even though he's helped me such a great deal. He gave me Prabhupada's Gita. He introduced me to the Ma Mantra. And in fact, when I was living with him, I used to eat a lot of fruits. I'd buy lots of fruits. And without me knowing, he would be offering the fruits that I'd purchased to Krishna, so that I'd be eating prasad without knowing it as well. And more than that, he was just, there's an amazing devotee in America who is by the name of Jaya Chaitanya Prabhu, who for many years was the top book distributor in America. One year he distributed 85,000 books in 1 year by himself. And he gave a wonderful, there was like a conversation with him about his life and his services. And he used the word friendship before philosophy. And that was very much this person, also this wonderful devotee, introduced me to Krishna consciousness. More than anything, he was a wonderful friend to me. But he takes no credit. So this is a devotee. On the other hand, again, with materialists, or even those within, we can examine ourselves within Krishna consciousness. We may be practicing, but do we sometimes blame others for our own suffering, which is ultimately, the suffering lies within our own mind. So the external situation, the details and all that may be different, how people treat us, but ultimately we're the cause of our own suffering because we can't deal with our own mind. I speak for myself that if I face an agitating situation, I mean, even this week I was doing some service for the temple, and I asked a devotee to do, to provide a service, and the devotee kindly agreed. But then I didn't acknowledge his response for a couple of days. I was busy with work and I didn't want to be on my phone and stuff. And then that devotee, I mean, rightly or wrongly, he was a bit upset that I didn't acknowledge him, and he chastised me a little bit. And I was feeling, initially, my initial response was I took that personally, and he was, and then I kind of, was thinking, oh, I was just doing my service. I can't be on my phone all the time, all this, that. And I was quick to want to complain about him. But then I thought, no, I don't know what he's going through. He could be under lots of pressure. And ultimately anything that a real devotee, not like myself, will get, we'll see that, as it's wonderfully explained within that you should now take everything that comes from Krishna. A pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulations as favors from the Lord. So even when we may be, obviously we don't become a doormat, or we don't let people trample all over us, but at the same time, we don't get offended so easily. We shouldn't be offended so easily by the actions of others. We should just kind of take it lightly, and as long as it's not directly impacting our service, or we don't have to interact with them so much, we shouldn't take insults and corrections to heart so much. So this is something that I'm definitely working on, but something that you can see Yudhishthira Maharaj here. So here he's approached Bhishma Dev, and it said earlier, as we discussed, that even Krishna couldn't pacify Yudhishthira Maharaj. But now we'll move on to a bit more about Bhishma Dev and why Bhishma Dev knew, because he was a pure devotee and so connected to Krishna within his heart, he knew that Krishna had arranged for Yudhishthira to be pacified by him, because he knew that if we look at Bhishma Dev as a personality, let's just explore his backstory a little bit. So I'm sure many of you are aware that Bhishma Dev's father, Shantanu Maharaj, essentially the ruler of the world, fell in love with Ganga Devi and requested Ganga Devi to marry him. Ganga Devi, obviously being a deva, a celestial being, and as well as being beautiful, very, very powerful also. But also with Shantanu Maharaj being a great king. But Ganga Devi said, yes, okay, I will marry you, but if on one condition, that any of my actions that I take, you do not question them. You do not question any of my actions. And so Shantanu Maharaj, he was so eager to have the hand of Ganga Devi that he agreed. So they were duly wedded, and they gave birth to a child. Ganga Devi gave birth, but immediately, once the child was born, Ganga Devi, what did she do? She took the child into her own waters. So essentially drowning the child. And Shantanu Maharaj, he was so heartbroken by this, but he'd made this promise that he wouldn't say anything, so because otherwise he would lose Ganga Devi. So like this, he was in so much angst, but he stuck to his word. But then this happened again and again and again, until Ganga Devi had taken 7 children to the waters to be submerged, and then finally the 8th child was born, and Shantanu Maharaj couldn't take it any longer, and he said, no, enough now. Why are you doing this to our children? I refuse. I cannot let you take this 8th child of mine and submerge him. At which point Ganga Devi, she said, okay, Maharaj, as per our agreement, I must leave you now, but I will spare this child. This child, then known as Devarat, later to be known as Bhishma Dev. So on the one hand, externally, we can think that what a horrible thing Ganga Devi has done. But actually, if we look at the backstory of these personalities, they are actually celestial beings who'd committed great offenses to a sage known as the 8 Vasus, of which Bhishma Dev was one. And they were cursed by a great sage after stealing the sage's cow. And these Vasus, so they were cursed, but then they asked, okay, they were cursed to take birth as humans, which is a lower birth for celestial beings. But such was the mercy of the sage Vasishtha that he said, okay, can we please, can they prayed to Ganga Devi also that, will you be our earthly mother, and can you ensure that our lifespan as a on the earthly realm is very short, so that we could go back to the celestial realm. So she carried out her duty. However, the person, the Vasu, who was most guilty of the crime of stealing the cow, and was actually the one to commit the crime, he would have to be cursed to spend the most time on the earthly realm, and that soul, that jiva, was would later on become Bhishmadev. So now Bhishmadev, he's actually taken by Ganga Devi to be educated, and then we look at Bhishmadev. Okay, so he's the son of Shantanu Maharaj, extremely powerful king, and his mother is Ganga Devi. Ganga Devi, an amazing, powerful deva. And so already his birthright means that this is going to be an amazing individual. Then you look at his education, and he was educated in Swargaloka, so a higher realm, and he was educated by Brihaspati, a great sage, and the Brahmin, the priest of the Devas. He also received the art of he was also educated by one of the four Kumaras. Then he was taught the art of warfare by Parshuram, who's an incarnation of the Lord himself, and he was actually given weapons by Indra. So you can see here that this backstory is just showing what a powerful person, both like his education, his birthright, the weapons that he had, who he was taught by, materially, spiritually. He was the highest person you could imagine, in terms of his virtues, everything. But so he was the most powerful person on planet Earth, and he was a devotee of Krishna. However, this whole pastime, the Mahabharata, we're reading the Bhagavatam, this section now, part of this Leela is to demonstrate that such an elevated, powerful personality, he had the birthright, he had the education, he had the weapons, he had all the backing from extremely powerful personalities, but there's one thing he was missing. He didn't have Krishna. And so despite having everything you could ask for materially, and even more so, he wasn't fighting on the side of the Lord, so he was destined to lose. And this is a real stark lesson in the life of Bhishmadev, which he knew, and he accepted his responsibility to demonstrate this. And in one sense, Bhishmadev knew that the Lord was using him to demonstrate this point, as well as glorify him during his death. So Bhishmadev, then there's a whole story, probably don't have time now to go into, but how he takes the vow of being a brahmachari, will never take to the throne due to as we discussed last week, due to the wishes of Satyavati, Shantanu Maharaj's second wife. And then it comes to this section, and there's the battle of the Battle of Kurukshetra, and he's fighting on the side of Duryodhana, so he's actually fighting against Krishna directly. And however, he's got so much love for the Pandavas that although he's fighting, he's kind of half-heartedly fighting in one sense. And Duryodhana picks up on this. Duryodhana actually chastises him and criticizes him and says, "You're not even fighting properly." And this is the point we made also, that a materialistic person will blame others and not take responsibility for their own failures. But then Bhishmadev says, "Yes, what can I do? The Pandavas are very dear to me." And the Pandavas, such amazing personalities, is that because Bhishmadev was their teacher before the Battle of Kurukshetra, even though they were due to fight him, they paid obeisances to him as you would one's guru. And they also asked him for his blessing, that they would be successful. And so he blessed them like that. Whereas Duryodhana did no such thing. And so Bhishma Dev, in one sense, he'd given the blessing to the Pandavas that they would be successful. And because they were such, since they had such love for each other, the love was reciprocal, whereas Duryodhana's wasn't. However, it comes to a point in the battle where they're somewhat losing, and Bhishma Dev is chastised by Duryodhana and said, yes, you know, you're supposed to be the most powerful warrior, but yet we're not even winning. I bet you can't even kill the Pandavas. And he insults his pride like this. Now, Bhishma Dev, he's a pure Kshatriya. So although he's all wise, he's all knowing, he still has a duty to fulfill. And he's playing that role of a Kshatriya. So he becomes insulted and says, yes, okay, tomorrow I will kill the Pandavas with these special 5 arrows, which I will prepare, imbued with my Shakti. With these 5 arrows, I will kill the 5 Pandavas like this. Now Duryodhana, he's not quite convinced, doesn't believe Bhishma Dev. So he says, let me take care of those arrows. And he takes the arrows from Bhishma Dev and stores them. At which point, Krishna, it's very, very late in the night at this point, and Krishna approaches Arjun and says, come, we're going to the camp of Duryodhana. So they approach late at night to the camp of Duryodhana. Now, in these days, despite them being at war, even people like Duryodhana, such was a much better time then that there was still an etiquette, so that people would not kill each other at night. They would not fight. They would only fight on the battlefield. And even if an enemy were to approach the camp, then they would welcome him with all respect. And this is very much Vedic culture, actually. It's said that even if an enemy approaches your home, you should treat them like a guest. A bit of slight cultural reference is once I was serving His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj, and we've done some preparations for him. And I served, the prasad, and I'd served him 3 dishes. And Mara said, please prepare at least 1 more dish. And I said, yes, Maharaj, but is everything okay? And he said, yes. But he said, even if an enemy comes to your home, you must treat him like a guest and offer him all due respects. But for an enemy, you give them 3. So for someone you're favorable to, give them either 2 or 4 or more than that, but never 3, because 3 means that the person you're serving is an enemy. So that was something that I learned new that day. And I just prepared an additional salad to serve to Maharaj, because he definitely wasn't an enemy. And I'm very, very grateful to him for everything he's taught me. So in this way, Duryodhana, following the etiquette of the time, actually welcomed Krishna and Arjuna and said, oh, welcome, my brother. What can I do for you? And, paid respects in that way, at least. And then Krishna, what did he request? He requested the 5 arrows. And of course, following the etiquette of a request by a guest, one must fulfill it. So Duryodhana then gave the arrows to Krishna. And so then Bhishma Dev was without these arrows, which he'd specially created to kill the Pandavas. And the next day, then he was unable to kill them. However, he still fought ferociously the next day, being spurred on by Duryodhana's words, so much so that he actually decimated half the huge army of the Pandavas. He decimated about half just by himself. I believe it was something like 7 Ukshinis, which is many, many thousands of men by himself. At which point, at the end of the day, the Pandavas were actually distraught. They were thinking, how can we stop Bhishma Dev? And they were crying at Krishna's feet, thinking, how can we stop Bhishma Dev? At which point, the Krishna actually instructed them and said, well, the only way to stop Bhishma Dev, the only one person knows how to stop him, and that is Bhishma Dev himself. So you need to ask him. And they were thinking, how can we do such a thing? We have so much love for him. How can we ask him how to kill him? And surely he'll be upset with us. But Krishna convinces them, and so they go over to the camp of Bhishma Dev in a very somber mood. And again, if someone was asking us advice on how they could be better than us or attain victory over us, I'm sure we'd react in a very different way, but Bhishma Dev, such love, such compassion, such an amazing devotee, and such is because he's a devotee, he knows what the difference between right and wrong, and that he's on the wrong side. And secondly, his love for the Pandavas. He's very delighted, actually. And he's also just full of compassion. He addresses, the Pandavas so nicely. My dear Pandavas, absolutely, there's a way to defeat me. Please do. I've given you my blessings to defeat me. And in this way, he advises them that being a pure blood Kshatriya, he will only fight with men and Kshatriyas, and he will, if he is approached and challenged by a woman or someone who's not a man, then he will lay down his weapons and put his arms open and refuse to fight, and in that way he can be defeated. And it so happened that the Pandavas had such a warrior on their side by the name of Shikandi. So Shikandi is described in different versions, but essentially he was an Inuk, which I suppose in today's language could be described as transgender. So not male, not quite female either. And so as such, later on, then he was actually challenged by Shikandi and then pierced by several arrows as a result of this, as he refused to fight Shikandi. Now, this is a bit of the backstory of Bhishma Dev, and he knew that he was going to lose the battle, and yet he was happy to do so. He knew that he was going to undergo suffering, but he was happy to do so. Why is this? And this is the final part of today's session where we can learn from the teachings of what Bhishma Dev is saying, and Prabhupada's purport here is that Bhishma Dev, he knew to trust in the plan of the Lord, and he was happy to escape the material entanglement of this world, and he was happy almost to he was around 180 years old at the time, and he was happy to leave his body, knowing that he had the benedictions of doing the will of the Lord in his heart. So a principle here and a theme of this particular verse, with reference to the purport by Srila Prabhupada, I'm just going to repeat this again. In the last sentence of the purport, or well, there's several parts here, but so I'll just refer to a few sentences. A devotee's duty, therefore, is to ungrudgingly accept tribulations from the Lord as a benediction. What does this mean? When we face tribulations, difficulties, we accept this as a benediction, as a blessing from the Lord. A pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulations as favors from the Lord. How can we comprehend this within our own mind when we're facing difficulties, when we're perhaps getting insulted by other people, or when things don't go our way, we're suffering with health or difficult situations within the family or at work or outside or ever. So a point here is, and this is kind of leading up to the end, and hopefully we can have some discussion, but a point here is suffering becomes more when you become a devotee or aspire to become a devotee. So the moment a person takes up the beads, takes up the Maha Mantra and decides, okay, at this moment first I want to use my life in the service of the Lord and connect to the Lord and fulfill my constitutional position as a servant of the Lord, then actually one's life can become more difficult. However, the difference between an aspiring devotee and a normal materialist is that the devotee suffering may be increased, but it's a token. It's a token of what they would receive. So that's the difference between their reactions. So what do I mean by token? I mean that Krishna will modify the suffering. He's not just giving suffering for the sake of suffering, and he doesn't want to see us suffer. However, he modifies the suffering in such a way that the suffering, is taken in the right way, will be enough to elevate that aspiring devotee to become pure, to become purified, so that they can go back to him. So the principle here is Krishna, we've had so many lifetimes of committing sinful activities, animal life, past lives as humans, and who knows what atrocities we've committed in past lives. What to speak of this life? Krishna condenses that, and he wants us to go back to him as soon as possible. So we may find sometimes challenges will come more and more as we start practicing Krishna consciousness. But why is this? It's to elevate our consciousness, because we wouldn't, if everything was, in England, we have the saying hunky dory, if everything was wonderful and we wouldn't have any desire or impetus to change. But if we don't change and we stay as we are, we'll never become pure and reach Krishna. There's that saying, diamond can't be polished without friction, gold can't be purified without fire. In the same way, we can't hope to elevate our consciousness without facing some difficulties. So this is the principle here, that Krishna gives us these reactions when we take to Krishna consciousness, not for the sake of just to punish us, but actually for reform. So in the same way, a child may get burnt by the fire and it will learn then not to touch the fire again. In the same way, when we receive insults, when we receive certain reactions, it's for us to, the way we should deal with this is we may obviously in that moment be feeling, Krishna, why are you doing this to me? Why is this happening? But regardless, if we don't understand why it's happening to us, maybe not in that direct moment, but maybe the next day, as we processed our emotions, we still pay our obeisances and we thank the Lord. This is the mood of the devotee. And we can do it in such a way that we can say, perhaps, Krishna, as it said, accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, Bhishma Dev is saying in this verse. So inconceivable, we can't fathom what Krishna has in plan for us. We may think, oh, Krishna, could you just give me some, help me be a bit more materially better situated, give me a better wife, give me a better husband, give me better children, give me better grandparents, make all my family devotees, or give me some more Lakshmi, improve my material situation. And then Krishna, I promise I'll be able to become your pure devotee that way. But a better material situation sometimes does, sometimes doesn't bring us closer to the Lord. In fact, if we really think about it, it could take us away from the Lord. But Krishna's inconceivable plan, he knows exactly what is needed for us if we can take it in the right way to go back to him and improve. So in this way, it's difficult. I mean, I'm kind of talking to myself here, but it's recommended that even when we're going through difficulties, we actually thank Krishna for those difficulties and pray for the intelligence from him, the buddhi, to understand why we're going through those difficulties, so we can elevate our consciousness and become closer to him. I'd like to end a little bit with, I mentioned Vrindavan earlier, and I remember my first time I went to Vrindavan, and so I actually had a month built up in leave, and I needed to take it before the end of the financial year. So being new in Krishna consciousness, I thought, let me just spend a month in Vrindavan. So I went to Vrindavan, and I visited places of Krishna's pastimes, including Nandagram, where he had many of his pastimes with Lord Balaram growing up. And me being naive as I was, we visited many local temples, and the local pujari would offer us water, and I would take that water down wholeheartedly when really I should have just been touching it to my lips. And within a few hours, I became horribly, horribly ill. And for about 10 days, I was bedridden and vomiting and everything. And I couldn't eat anything, and I became very weak. And I was quite upset because I'd come to Vrindavan for the first time, and I was just in bed for 10 days. And then finally, but again, this was probably some purification happening. Afterwards, I was so enthused. And I thought, okay, now I can immerse myself in devotional activities. My health is back. And the devotee I said, you know what? I've been struggling to chant, even 16 rounds. I've been so ill. Now I want to just spend the whole day chanting. So the devotee said, go to the Goshala. No one will disturb you there. So, and you can chant all day there. So I went to the Goshala in Vrindavan, but having never been there before, I went round the back way, and I went to some garden. And I don't know, to this day, I'm not quite sure what I was thinking, but I saw there was a wall about 12 feet high, and behind that wall was a tree, and there was a large branch on there. And I thought, maybe as a child, I used to be fond of climbing trees. I thought, let me climb up there. I'll have a nice view of the whole gardens. Let me sit on there and I'll chant. So I climbed up the wall. I went and sat on the tree, and I was looking at about 15 foot in the air, and I had a beautiful view of the garden and the Goshala, and I was sat there just chanting. Then what happened? So imagine there's a wall in front of the tree, and several little monkeys were on the wall. They ran past me looking a little bit afraid. And so I just and they ran quickly past me, and then I kind of ignored them, carried on chanting. And then I heard a loud shriek, and I looked to my right, and the boss monkey, the big one, came charging at me. And as he charged at me, I fell out of the tree. Thankfully, I managed to put my wrist down before my head hit the floor. Otherwise, I could have even died. But my wrist hit the floor. I sprained my wrist, and then my head hit a rock, and I started feeling very dizzy. So I approached the front of the Goshala, and often in Vrindavan and other places in India, there are people trying to sell certain things, and there was a man there selling certain things. But as I was approaching, kind of dizzy, he just had a shocked look on his face, and he started pointing at me, and almost he was screaming, almost going, "Oh!" And then I was wondering why, and I realized I had blood all down on my white kurta, and my head had been cut open. So like this, I had a lot of purification in the Dham, in one sense. But as a result of that accident that I had, believe it or not, I was able, through that accident, one, for a short time, I was infamous, I will say, in Vrindavan. But second of all, authorities were alerted. The devotees had an accident in the Goshala. The vice president of Krishna Balaram actually took me to a doctor. He patched me up. There was a doctor staying in the room next door to me, and that doctor would check on my wound every day. And that doctor actually introduced me to 4 Prabhupada disciples who I got to spend a lot of time with in Vrindavan. And then also the devotees actually explained to me that because, one, it happened in Vrindavan, and 2, I'm practicing, that this was just a small token. So I got a token reaction, which actually, I received. I still got a little scar on the back of my head, so a little Vrindavan stamp on my head. But it was actually a blessing in disguise, but also maybe a token. And if this had happened elsewhere and I wasn't practicing Krishna consciousness, I may have had a much worse reaction. So this is the final point with regards to reversals, that a devotee always thinks that, how kind is Krishna? He's putting me in this difficult situation, but it's just a token. And it could be much worse, but thanks to his mercy, he's just given me a token and something that is meant to elevate me. So that was a quick kind of overview of some thoughts from this beautiful verse, a review of the situation at hand, Yudhishthira Maharaj's mood, a little bit of the backstory and the wonderful character again of Bhishma Dev, and then how we can learn from Bhishma Dev, learn from his teachings, learn from this verse, and apply this to our everyday lives when we're facing trials and tribulations as we do. So I'd like to thank you all for your kind attention today. Please forgive me for any mistakes, and I'd welcome at this time any comments, any corrections, or any questions. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for taking us through this and sharing your pastime as well. You almost took us to Vrindavan, and we saw the whole thing happening. So thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I just wanted to say something. Thank you, Prabhuji. A very nice class and plenty that we can take away from this class. And what I mainly take away from this is like the point you made is normally when things go wrong, we always find someone else who we could blame. And when things go right, we always are all, happy to take credit for it. So that's a really good point that, when things go wrong and when we fail, we should take responsibility for it. And also from Bhishma Dev's life, the point I take is like, no matter how powerful this material world is and how much successful we are, but if there is no Krishna in the center, then there is no power. It's useless. So those are the comments I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much to my dear mother, Shobha, for joining the call and for your wonderful comments. Yeah, just reinforcing that point that sometimes we can see other people getting success and they're achieving success materially, but we're not seeing the full picture. We may be envious of people, and I can speak for myself. Sometimes I think, oh, I wish I had, that Prabhuji's position, especially if they're not a devotee. Also, sometimes you think, why is it this is a horrible person and they're getting so much success? But there is no success if Krishna is not on your side, and ultimately they will, as we say in England, they will come a cropper. They will not be successful in the ultimate goal of life. And we can also see, that people aren't, they're not ultimately happy, even though they have much material success. And yes, and the second point that, yeah, it's so difficult, and it's said that Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he doesn't say he says man manabhava mad bhakto. He says he's not saying just think of me when you're chanting your japa and when you're reading Bhagavatam, or when you're doing worship, or when you're with devotees. He doesn't say that. He says always think of me, always. So this is why it said Krishna consciousness is a moment-to-moment practice. Our sadhana, yes, part of that sadhana is prescriptive chanting, reading, associating, discussing, but part of that practice is moment-to-moment observing ourselves. When we find, as our mother wonderfully said, that when we see ourselves blaming others and not taking responsibility, when we see ourselves taking credit, when really we should be looking to glorify others and not take the credit ourselves, knowing that everything comes from the Lord anyway. When we find ourselves doing that, can we self-correct? Can we self-correct, at least in our mind? This is also part of our sadhana. So thank you very much for the wonderful comment.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Arya Govind Prabhuji has a question, but I just want to ask, because it's continuation from Shobha Mataji's question. So when we, we've understood about not blaming others, but blaming ourselves or taking responsibility. So for credit, do we give the credit to somebody else and in our mind think about Krishna at that time, or should we just give the credit away to somebody else?
Very nice question, Mataji. Again, as you alluded to, it's a very internal process. So someone, just to give an analogy, someone once said, when someone expresses gratitude and gives you the credit, internally, you give that credit as a flower to your guru, who will make a garland to place on Radha Gokulananda. So that's kind of the chain. What does that look like practically is that sometimes someone may say, Kritika Mataji, thank you so much for your wonderful service. And I've thanked you many times. And I want to take this opportunity to also thank you in providing this forum for all of us to read Bhagavatam. So thank you so much. And I think in one sense, we take that, we can take it externally, and internally we know we can express gratitude that, oh, thank you, you know, Krishna, thank you to my gurus, thank you to my seniors who've allowed me to serve in this capacity, and without them I wouldn't even be here anyway. So we kind of internally pass the credit back up the chain back to Krishna, and in this way we become purified. And I've noticed within myself that when we start internally, externally we can accept it, and I think sometimes it can happen the other way. Some people be like, no, Prabhuji, no. Whereas actually I've noticed some devotees have advised me it's good to accept, because you're almost denying that, because you're denying essentially them they're glorifying some ability that you have. Where's the ability come from Krishna? So don't deny them that opportunity, just accept it humbly, but internally you're passing it up the chain. Does that make sense, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, I was confused because the same thing that you have to take it, but then when you take it, you pass it on internally. Thank you so much. I know we've exhausted our time, but there are 3 questions and we'll take all that. Prabhuji, do you have the time? Prabhuji?
Yes, I do, Mataji. Yes, I'd love to. Hare Krishna.
Are you going, Prabhu? Kindly ask your question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare
Thank you for
Krishna.
the wonderful class. I was just trying to add whatever I heard from a lecture on YouTube from Dr. Nitai Sevini Mataji. She says, handling problems, just like, we have to think like we are planning our future. And I mean, thinking out, I mean, we are considering the present and then we are planning our future. But Krishna plans our present, considering our future. So Krishna always is planning our present, thinking always about our future. So that was the point I just wanted to, I heard from Mataji, and then I was just wanted to make it.
Thank you so much, Hare Govinda Prabhu. You know, actually, Prabhupada alludes to this in the purport, where he says that the devotee does not have to learn anything new from the Lord, because the Lord teaches the sincere devotee always from within. What does this mean? Is that we're making these big plans to do this, to do that, to advance materially. Maybe we may make plans to advance. Okay, this is how I'm going to advance in Krishna consciousness. But ultimately, the Lord's always, as Hare Govinda Prabhu has said, is that the Lord's God knows best. And the more that we can get in tune with that, because the Lord's within the heart. So if we can get in tune with, he's actually sending us messages constantly. So we may have one plan, and we may be trying so hard to work in this area. Oh, I must become this in this material position. I must make all my family devotees. I must do this, and then I can advance in Krishna consciousness. But Krishna's like, no, actually, for you, you're better if you don't achieve material, financial, or whatever material situation you want to say, or even spiritual position, because that won't be good for you. And if you were to achieve that, then you might become prideful, and then that will take you away from me, even within Krishna consciousness. So instead, I'm having to. So this is Krishna. Krishna is the trusting in his plan. Easy for me to say, but constantly just bearing that in mind and thinking, sometimes saying to him, Krishna, I don't know what your plan is, but I'm trusting you. You better help me out here. But I trust you, Krishna. Please just give me the intelligence to see what your plan is, and follow and connect with you in my heart, so I can take the right direction. Wonderful point. Thank you so much, Hare Govinda Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Panchali Mataji, kindly unmute and ask your question or comment. Hare Krishna. Panchali,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
Prabhuji. I'm outdoors, so I'm not. Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, it's coming
Can
in
you
and
hear
out,
me?
but I can hear you now, Mataji. Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, can you hear me?
Yes, Mataji, I can.
Sorry, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Sorry, I'm not with her. A very quick question, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful. So So we have quite a few devotees who, not, I wouldn't say they are devotees, but they worship Krishna, they worship other demigods, and then on the back of that, they do activities which are not very conducive to Krishna consciousness, or not very conducive to be human beings, to be honest. So how do we attach ourselves to them when they all the time they talk praying and worshiping, and yet they do things which are not particularly right on on the strength of that.
Yeah, thank you, Maggie. Thank you very much for your wonderful question. So if I heard correctly, Panchali Mataji is essentially saying that we may see people who are worshipping Krishna to some degree, but yet they're doing some abominable activities. And how do we reconcile that? Because they're worshipping Krishna? Why isn't it that they're why isn't Krishna guiding them then, if they're worshipping Krishna? One, and two, how do we approach them, such people? It's a very good question, very practical kind of question as well. So I'll just relate to my own experience that we will see all different levels of devotees, and we shouldn't judge externals. If we read the Bhagavatam, I mean, later we'll read the Bhagavatam, and Ajamil, he ran off, he left his wife for a prostitute. What's worse than that? But yeah, we'll see some people, they worship Krishna to some degree, they may go out drinking. Some people, they worship Krishna to some degree, but they'll be eating meat. But all we can say then is so we look at those people and think, okay, at least they have some connection to Krishna. So they're on their journey to Krishna. And at least what we can do is, rather than chastise them, because no one, let's be honest, no one likes to be told what to do. No one. If you're here on this material world, it's because you don't like to be told what to do and you like to play God. So that's just the reality. I'll speak for myself. Unless it's even my Guru Maharaj, he'll tell me what to do and I'll follow it, but it's still a bit difficult for me what to speak of if anyone else tells me what to do. So in that way, when we see people doing this, and our tendency, and I can speak for myself, is we want to be mini guru, and we want to tell them, don't you know, Krishna is would not like it. He says in the Bhagavad Gita, this, quoting this verse and that verse, and don't you know that why you're worshiping Krishna, and if you're drinking, eating meat, or whatever they might be doing. But then that's just going to push them further away. Instead, the principle is, if we have to interact with them and they're doing even a little bit for Krishna, we just encourage that. Oh, how wonderful you're coming to the temple. I know people who come to the temple, but they drink and they eat meat and all kinds of other things. So we just encourage the good things that they're doing. At the same time, we don't take so much of their association. It's said that we should associate with, I believe it's in the Nectar of Devotion, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we should associate with those that are senior to us, those that are on our kind of equal footing, peers, and those that are junior to us also, so we can practice kind of cultivating people and sharing what we learn. So in the same way, we keep our little bit of distance from these kind of people because we don't want to get dragged down, especially, and that takes, the details are different, that looks different for different people. Ultimately, the principle is, because we all have to associate with people who aren't practicing Krishna consciousness to some degree, we don't reveal our heart. That's ultimately it. We don't reveal our heart to these people, and we don't have intimate relationships with certain people. And we, even within Krishna consciousness, even if someone externally is practicing Pucca 16 rounds, even if they're Brahmin initiated, all this, they still may not be the right association for us. So be very careful to make sure you associate only with like-minded devotees, as Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said. And how do we reconcile that? Well, how can they be worshipping Krishna and doing abominable things? Well, they're just on a journey. It may not be this life that they fully take to Krishna consciousness. Maybe they need to be fully sick of the material world and go really heavily into that material entanglement further, and you'll never know when the kind of light switch will flick on and the bulb will come on. And I look at myself, you know, like I'm definitely, you know, not from such a pious background. I was actually going to share today that I was in Chennai, and an amazing devotee, Prabhupada disciple, Mother Urmila, was giving the class, Bhagavatam class, and she was explaining in the class that the reaction for anyone who has anything to do with killing of a cow, so that's like cooking it, like killing it, cooking it, eating it, anything like that, they're destined to take birth and be killed as a cow, the number of hairs there are on a cow. And I'm completely honest, I'm not from a pious background. I became vegetarian, thankfully, before I came to Krishna consciousness, as I became more pious, more spiritual. But I was raised eating meat, and sometimes I would even, I feel so horrible to say this, I'm looking at Panchali's beautiful picture of Radha Lundanishwara. I'd consume cows also. Such, you know, I was raised like that. And or by certain family members, and I thought, oh, Krishna, I've had it now, you know, I've got no chance. But Mother Urmila then explained that the whole point of these reactions of karma is to develop empathy and learn. And so if one becomes a devotee and develops compassion for cows, then they won't have to receive that level of reaction. And such now, obviously, practicing Krishna consciousness, Krishna is Govinda, Gokulananda. He gives bliss to the cows. He's the protector of the cows, and we too also should be lovers and protectors of the cows. So, my point is that we see the externals, but we don't know what point someone is on their journey. We see the externals and we discriminate accordingly, but we don't judge, because we never know. One day they may become some amazing devotee. You can never tell. But yeah, how we deal with that is, you know, just look after ourselves and do what's necessary to protect our own Krishna consciousness. I hope that makes sense, Panchali Mataji, and please do reach out for me if you'd like to discuss it a little bit more. It's a very interesting point. I think maybe we've got time for the last question. Priya, is that Priya Darshini?
Yeah, hi all, and
Hi,
thanks for the
Krishna.
lovely class. I had a question. It might be a silly question, it may be like a simple question, but something that I found very difficult is often we may see that we may go through a period where we go through one difficulty after another. And I understand that we're meant to see Krishna's hand in the situation, see what he wants us to learn from the situation. But it can be quite difficult to continue to see Krishna's mercy through these difficulties, especially when it's one after the other. I understand that it may be a process of anartha nivriti and clearing of anarthas, and yeah, but how do we really deal with that in a practical way?
Wonderful question. Yeah. So my wife Priya Darshini has asked a very pertinent question, that sometimes in life it just feels like we're just, for want of a better word, we're getting smashed by the material energy, difficulty after difficulty after difficulty, and we can see this, you know, so we can see it in the Shastras, we can see it in the Pandavas. They faced it difficulty after difficulty after difficulty. That doesn't make it any easier to deal with, and when we're actually dealing with it, we think, okay, I can't really see what Krishna's trying to teach me here. You know, I'm praying, I'm chanting, I'm doing that, but it just doesn't seem to end. So how do we deal with this when we're in this situation? So one, I would say, is that often if we look back at how and reflect on how we have got through difficulties, and we'll see that the lesson will usually come after. We won't realize it when we're in the middle of it. It's too difficult. So one is just getting through it. And then how do we get through it? The second point is we have to have really, as devotees or aspiring devotees, we have to have really good self-care, because devotees face difficulties. That's just, as we've discussed, that's a given. That's what Krishna, in one sense, it shows the process is working, but that means that we have to really look after ourselves. And what does that look like? It means we have to practically, we have to, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, health sadhana service, we have to really look after our health. If it means that we have to drop our services or reduce our services, if it even means we have to reduce our sadhana, we do that while we take care of our health. That's very, very important. Even Prabhupada says, keep your body in good condition and serve Krishna. You can't, we're not this body, but it doesn't mean we neglect the body. It's a gift from Krishna, which is a vehicle which enables us to serve him. So if we don't have good health, and I think actually, you know, it's a big thing in ISKCON that a lot of devotees are sleep deprived, and through sleep deprivation, so many illnesses occur. Self-care, a part of that is sadhana. The next point is sadhana. So, but ultimately doing things, we discussed this last week, that enthuse us. So when we're feeling low, when we're facing lots of difficulties, we need to do as many things as we can to pump us up, to give us that energy to get through the difficulties. And that looks different for everyone. So for some people, it means connecting to people that they feel inspired by, or that they feel, you know, this person is going to give me what I need. We need to ask, we need to be a little bit selfish, knowing that ultimately this is going to help me serve the Lord and the devotees more effectively. For some people, it may be that you like listening to certain lecturers, and ultimately it's a sign of strength to also ask for help and reach out. So when we're going through difficulties, we can't hope to do it alone. And by asking for help, we're actually, and especially asking for help for the devotees, we're actually taking shelter of Krishna. So it's a big topic, and the details are different, but that's a general principle. I hope that was of some help to you. If you have anything to add, Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mataji, for that lovely question. And the last question of the session, it was like an icing on the cake, and we all suffer. And I mean, when at least I started trying to aspire to be a devotee, somebody, my best friend said, "Oh, tu to gai." I mean, you are now going to have a lot of difficulties in life. So I think it's well known that devotees suffer a lot. But thank you for making this point, that we have to look after ourselves, and we need to, if you are not going through difficulties, at least identify right now the contact people that you will need, because you will definitely need them on this path. So, and we understand this is so that we can be purified. So thank you very much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful session. Arya Govind Prabhu, are you able to end the session, please?
Yeah, yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful session. Always you're giving a lot of practical tips and how to deal with the day-to-day Krishna conscious activities. Thank you so much, and also taking us through the story of Bhishma and the Ganga Mata. Although I joined halfway, so it was still a wonderful half-an-hour session, and of course, the question-answer session. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. I request all the assembled devotees to unmute and chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra once.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Pancha kalpatarubhishcha kripa sindhu devacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
His Grace Kamal Panchal Prabhu ki jai. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.